Good evening. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I'll go ahead and call this Capital Improvements Plan Budget Work Session to order. It is 6:15 p.m. on Thursday, December 7th. We have an agenda in front of us this evening. Dr. Hummer, any amendments or adjustments to the agenda?
No, Mr. Chair.
Looking for a motion?
Motion to approve the agenda.
We have a motion?
Second.
And a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. We have a couple of people who would like to participate remotely. Mr. Atkins has requested to participate in the meeting remotely for a personal matter, specifically due to a work commitment being in Ashburn, Virginia. I would need a motion to allow Mr. Atkins to participate remotely. We have a motion?
Second.
And a second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Welcome, Mr. Atkins.
Thank you.
We also have Mr. Monk, who's requested to participate in the meeting remotely for a personal matter, specifically due to a work commitment and him being in Pennsylvania. I'm looking for a motion to allow Mr. Monk to participate.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Welcome, Mr. Monk.
Thank you.
All right, I think we will just turn it over to Dr. Hummer, if that's okay.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have 3 items that we want to discuss this evening. First, we are going to discuss our current CIP projects. We're then going to determine the order of these CIP projects, and then we're going to discuss the projects that need to move forward to the Board of Supervisors this upcoming year for FY25. Just want to remind everybody that this is a work session, so there is no recommendation that needs to go to the full board, any sort of motion out of this meeting. However, my recommendation down at the bottom will be asked of you on the December 12th meeting. This is just to have further conversation about our projects and essentially the extension of our board retreat that we had back in October. So with that, I'm now going to hand it over to Mr. Goodwin to review these, and please, looking forward to your questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Good evening, members of the board and everyone here tonight. Glad to see everyone. I wanted to remind you that last time we were together, I led you in a rousing rendition of Don't Stop Thinking About Tomorrow. So tomorrow's come and gone, so this is another day. But I started to think, well, what should I really talk about tonight in terms of a song? So I started with Love Can Build a Bridge. And then I thought, well, that's not right. We're really not here to build a bridge. And so I came up with an artist, Ed Sheeran, another well-known artist, and I thought, how about a couple of different songs he has, and one is Lego House. And then I thought to myself, well, wait a minute, that's too small. So, we're not really here to build a Lego house. And then I thought Castle on the Hill, right? That's the other end of the spectrum for what you can build. So I thought maybe tonight, somehow, we'll find an opportunity to build something together, whether it's a bridge, a Lego house, or a castle. So who knows? It'll be up to us to figure out where these fit on our plan. So I wanted to start off by talking with you about how things are calculated from a cost perspective. How do we determine if it's going to be a Lego house? How do we determine if it's going to be something different than that? So we start with our needs and how those are identified, whether that's a new or expanded facility to meet the growth in that population and a renovation to address an aging facility. We've talked about some of our buildings are new, some of our buildings have a good bit of age to them. Now remember, new schools and additions are sized based on the extent of the need and for the growth in that area that we know about. So such as Jordan Springs is a 10 classroom addition we're talking about, coupled with a rezoning that would address the 210 students in net that we expect on that northeast cluster to be over capacity on the maps we addressed in the past for 10 years. Remember, our major growth is in the northeast and the southeast along that I-81 corridor, the urban development area. Classroom sizes are estimated based on the grades that they serve, so square footage is included in those spaces, as you can see there. Some projects have architectural plans from which the square footages are drawn, like the construction documents we have for Jordan Springs, or some of those are conceptual plans when you talk about those pieces like a normal elementary school. We get our per square foot cost gathered from multiple sources. These are sources we use all the time. Professional cost estimators, our architects, contractors we work with, other school divisions that are nearby in our area. And then if we're going to do a warehouse or an office space, we utilize online sources that we can find. Those costs are then averaged based on the type of construction we're going to complete. New elementary, new secondary, a renovation, an addition, a warehouse we're going to build, a new office, or something that already exists that we're just kind of retrofit and make work for the needs we have in the division. So those phased occupied construction costs per square foot, they're generated using past information, and those are 12% more expensive than an unphased, unoccupied instruction. So I want to say that one more time in a different way. It costs more money, a project that's an occupied plan, than it does when it's a new plan, when we have students inside. The square footage of their proposed project is multiplied by that applicable average cost per square foot, and that's how we get our construction-only cost of the project. Non-construction costs are calculated as a percentage of those construction costs. For larger projects, this will make sense to us all as we have our own building projects at home. For a larger project, those non-construction costs are 18% or so. And for smaller projects, they're a little bit more, 20%. Non-construction costs vary from project to project. And those non-construction costs, which must be included, include land, architectural and engineering fees, construction manager, pre-construction costs. That's especially true if it's a CMAR project. Geotechnical testing, easements, work from the clerk of the works who's going to manage that job on site, and any kind of technology equipment that's going to be needed to make sure we have absolutely accurate information. Non-construction costs are, of course, then added to the construction cost to get a total cost. That's how we come up with those prices. Here we've broken it down into two different pieces because a lot of times people ask about different kinds of renovations. Sometimes it's a full renovation, sometimes it's a school-specific renovation or a part of a school. So in a full renovation, all of the needs are identified and included. So those needs include, but may not be limited to, structural pieces, safety and security, ADA needs, building envelope, the HVAC, power lights, technology, bathrooms, and all of the components, finishes, the gymnasium, the auditorium, CTE, equipment, and then furnishings are included in those costs. But what's different for a school-specific renovation is that maybe is more defined from a renovating approximately 50% of the needs identified at a school, not a full renovation. We include all those needs identified, including structural needs. Some of these are the same as a full renovation. Safety and security always taken into consideration. ADA always taken into consideration. We look at building envelope needs, the technology, bathrooms, any finishes that need to be remodeled or refinished or replaced, and then the site, and then the cafeteria and the scope. Adding students means adding size. So we look at that from a case-by-case assessment. We may need to increase the size of the gym, the auditorium, the modernized educational spaces as you see happening now at many of our projects, the CTE furnishings, and then of course equipment changes, and so do those needs as our students' learning needs change. We've had questions in the past about how do we receive and how did we come up with the cost for the fourth high school. It's a number that's on a list, so we wanted to put together something that showed and talked a little bit about applying the pieces I just explained to a particular project. You've heard the number 155 million. This is how we came up with that number when we placed it on that list. The square footage is about 257,000 square feet. Remember, the concept of the fourth high school has been around for quite some time. That square footage comes from 2017 when we were working with some other contractors, OWPR and then ZMM. So it is a very similar size to Millbrook. People have asked in the past, can we build another Millbrook? 1,250 students is what we kind of plan for capacity there. If you take the cost per square foot at that time, $509, and you get a new secondary school cost, this is just construction, only construction, not non-construction. It's about $130 million. And then if you take the non-construction cost, remember, because it's not occupied, that's 18% instead of 20%. That's our number. That includes all the architectural engineering, the management of construction, furnishing, inspections, commissioning, the owner, contingency fees, legal fees, utility relocation, surveys, testing, all the things that go into a new build. If you put those non-construction costs together, it's a little more than 23 million. So if you add 130 million plus to 23, almost 24 million, that's where you come up with that number. If you use a calculator, $154,359,340. So we represent that as 155 million when you see that on the list. The total cost for that square foot, $600 a square foot. Any questions about the calculation or the explanations I've provided so far? I apologize if I'm going too quickly.
Board members, any questions? Mr. Goodwin, I may have a question.
Sure.
On the slide where you were explaining some of those non-construction costs, one of the items listed there was land.
Correct.
The fourth high school, we already own the land. Has that been accounted for in the non-construction cost portion of this, or was that just a flat 18% added on?
I know we do own the land, so yes. Mr. Kenny is here and my team is here. Ken, do we know the land cost was calculated into the non-construction for that? Okay, because we own the land already. That is not included, sir. Correct. So we do own the land. In the number 155 million, the land was not added as a calculation. It was already owned.
Thank you. So the way I'm interpreting this, though, is that 23.5 million non-construction cost it was just calculated as an 18% add-on.
Correct.
Okay, but on the previous slide, it says 18% and it includes land. So
Correct.
I just am wondering how closely we actually calculated this number. Or if we just estimated, an additional 18%, not knowing.
Can I clarify, please? That's a great
Yes, sir.
question,
Thank you.
Mr. Comstock. But if you take a look at the new calculated cost, this is if the land wasn't purchased, if I'm understanding the question correctly. This was just an example that we provided. Mr. Kenny and Mr. Goodwin, please clarify. On the chart that we've provided you, which we're going to get to in a second, the new estimated cost is 152 million. So is that accurate, or did we not remove that from this cost?
I wasn't a part of putting that together, but that's exactly how it's done. I think the previous slide, what it's describing is that's where it would fit in would be the secondary cost. This particular thing is more refined, and the cost you're looking at now does not reflect land. It's already there. But if we did have to buy land, it would show up in those secondary costs.
Okay.
So
Yes, Mr. Lee was
18%
asked to remove those costs out, which is why that cost will be represented as a different price on the CIP.
So 18% is still an appropriate amount to look at for non-construction costs, even when we own the land already. Mr. Kenny?
That's a general number that we use when we calculate coming out of planning development.
But it should include the land. The 18%, correct?
I think we're all talking three different.
We are talking three different things, but we're trying to provide
Mr. Kenny, if you don't mind coming up,
yeah, thanks.
please.
Again, take the previous slide.
And good evening to everyone. And it is confusing the way, I think what you're trying to describe is what can come into those secondary costs. In
Correct.
particular, if we were secondary, you have a contractor that provides you that $130 million price tag, right? Okay, then we have our costs as a school division. Where they would show up when you line item, then if I showed you a budget, land would then come in there. Those percentages would change and fluctuate. We have reduced the percentages to be reflective of we don't need to purchase the land for this school. So this is just a synopsis of how this is put together, how costs are calculated. Then the next page is how these were calculated. And there's no land in those percentages there. And I think Dr. Hummer is correct. If you see on I think those numbers have been reduced down to like 16.5% on the next,
Oh, I see.
on those.
Okay.
So that is reflected. We didn't have to purchase the land.
Great question, Mr. Comstock, because if I may, we want to get this right because we want to make sure we get the most accurate number for the estimated cost. So great question, Mr. Comstock. We want to make sure we clear that. Thank you, Mr. Kenny.
Thank you, Mr. Kenny.
Any other questions? Thank you for that question.
I have one.
Mr. Comstock.
Mr. Monk, okay, go ahead. Yes, sir, Mr. Monk.
Sure, just a quick question, kind of along the same vein. I recognize that you can't get a full cost. These are estimates based upon there being, 30 items on this list. Should this move forward, what would be the steps to gain a more accurate estimate? And would there be a cost associated with that?
Thank you, if I may.
type.
Yeah. If I may, thank you for your question, Mr. Monk. We do have the numbers. Again, this was to help understand the 18% for a particular project. The fourth high school in particular, that non-construction cost as related by Mr. Lee to me, 16.5%. So that number was reduced from $23,546,340 to $21,584,145 to calculate that difference. That would be the difference in the cost. You're giving us a total estimate for this building, the new high school as described, $152,397,145, which would be a square footage dollar amount of $593.
Mr. Chair, is that okay? And Mr. Monk, if I'm understanding your question correctly, I want to make sure that we answer his question is, so say if we do move forward with this and say if it's the 152, and maybe Mr. Kenny, you can chime in on this and Mr. Crispin as well, is would that number potentially fluctuate? And would that number be the solid number that we move forward? So say in a grandiose world, if we approve this tonight, we approve it Tuesday, goes to the Board of Supervisors, they approve it and they approve the appropriation. Will it stay today at 152, and then will the appropriation be 152? I'm not talking about the Board of Supervisors approving. I'm talking about what number are we sending downtown. So could this number potentially change in regards to what we're going to send downtown?
No, this would be the number you go with, and we'd work backwards from this number. Facilitate design, that's when you bring in your AD team in, start work with them, do conceptual designs based upon working backwards for these numbers.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Kenny. And then the other piece that I would like to mention as well is, and Mr. Kenny, you might know this information, Mr. Goodwin, you and I have been talking about this as well based on our detective work and talking to folks that were here prior to us, is that when the initial concepts and plans were put together for the fourth high school, there was a cost that went into that. And that is not something that is typical, because typically you send down an estimated cost, and then if it's approved, then you go out for bid for both the architect and the builder. In this particular case, we went out to bid for a architect, and Ms. Cameron, you were here as well. You went out to bid for the architect. The plans were put together. There was a cost there, which I'm sure you can see the numbers here. It was not a cheap cost, and then we did not move forward with that project. So that's why it's not advisable to do that prior to getting an estimated total cost, because in the long run, we have now lost out on those dollars, which was roughly $4 to $5 million, roughly, I'm assuming, what we've been talking about. So that is why that is not a typical practice. So I want to make sure that we're clear on that. But Mr. Monk, I hope we answered your question. So I don't know if you heard Mr. Kenny. He was answering that, yes, that it should not vary from this too much. And this was what would be the number we would send downtown based on these estimates.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I didn't hear it, but thank you for the recap. I think your last statement was really what I was alluding to, is that this is an estimate. As we get closer, and should there be approval, then there would be a more formalized process where numbers would be potentially more concrete. But there's a financial obligation towards that, and as we've seen before, it's not advisable to do that before there's approval. So I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay. There seems to be some question to the land. So am I hearing this correctly, that these figures do not consider the land at all? Here's the land, we own it, here it is, poof. All these figures right here are just the building and the grounds and the other amenities.
Yeah, so Mrs. Martin, yes, the number that is on the next page is the number that does not include the land. We already own the land. It was already paid for. So this dollar amount that's on the next slide is the dollar amount not including the land. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Goodwin?
You're welcome. You want me to proceed?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. One of the things we've been talking about is an option to consider for the Armel Elementary School expansion. We had a great conversation. That was a joint meeting with the Board of Supervisors recently, and of course you all as members of our school board talking about where absolutely is the growth in the division in the county. We talked about the northeast and the southeast corridor. Since that time, I've met with principals at Armel Elementary School. I went to Bass Hoover Elementary School. I've talked with the principal at Middletown about different opportunities during that conversation. So we wanted to present to you again, just as a reminder, that the southeast cluster of elementary schools is expected to gain about 228 students in the next 10 years. We currently have modular units behind Armel Elementary School. So a rezoning will need to be coupled with the addition in order to address capacity issues for 10 years in that cluster of the county, the southeast cluster. So the school that is projected to be over capacity the most, if you look at our maps, which we'll reflect on again later in the presentation, is Middletown. This change has occurred because of the recent influx, as a reminder, of those new subdivisions in the Middletown attended zone, and because of more homes in Lake Frederick being sold to retirees and empty nesters, I believe, than probably was thought originally in that area. So if the addition were to be made to Middletown instead of Armel, fewer students would need to be rezoned. In order to be able to remove the modulars at Armel, that'd be a capacity of about 260 and the 13 classrooms there. We would need to make sure we constructed 13 classrooms for that capacity at Middletown. Again, we do not want to expand a school and leave modulars. We need to accommodate and make sure all of those students are under the roof at the elementary school they attend. We do not want to have a modular setting and an expansion. We want to solve that problem with the expansion. Any questions about that slide?
Board members, any questions? Looks like we're good, Mr.
All right, thank you so much. So our capital improvement plan, just as an update, so we have a list of potential capital improvement plan projects. I wanted to remind everyone they're in alphabetical order. That's the order that you will find those in. They are in ABC order. The estimates are in today's dollars. Of course, those could change by the time we decide to do those projects, or you decide to do those projects or complete those. So I just want to kind of run through quickly what they are to make sure that you understand the information that we have provided. The project title, of course, is on the left, and then we have tiered costs. So down the middle, you'll see it's kind of a new way to describe projects I talked a little bit earlier about full renovation, and then what I would call site-specific or school-specific renovations. So you'll see two numbers, $2 figures in some of these costs. For the Apple Pie Elementary School, there's a Phase 2 renovation that's there. That'd be a full renovation or school-specific. The dollar figure, of course, as an example for the full, $28,286,000. If we decided to go then in a different direction with a site-specific renovation, you can see that different cost, which is there, which is $21,191,000. That again is an October estimate from this year by us using the cost information that I provided to you earlier, the cost calculations. So then you have two scenarios in the next in ABC order, Armel Elementary School or Middletown Elementary School, two different costs, and in this particular box, the difference is the top number would be at Armel. It'd be a little more expensive because of the site to do the Middletown expansion. So this is an October estimate using cost information from architects, builders in our districts. And again, that expansion would assume an addition of 23,640 square feet. The fourth high school, we've talked a good bit about that capacity, 1,250. Student capacity with a 1,650 capacity in the core of the building. There's your cost that we've been talking about on a different slide. So I apologize, it's not recalculated in the middle of the two slides. So this is an October estimate, and again, that's 250,000 square feet, and that is new construction. You have Jordan Springs Elementary School classroom addition. It's one of the schools on the map we've looked at to go from the southeast now up to the northeast quadrant. It's our school that's going to be the most over capacity, I think projected to be close to 300 students over capacity in the next 10 years. We'll look at the map in a moment. That addition, $12 million in today's figures, 4,297 square feet addition. And remember there too, that would include some expansion of the gymnasium and things like that, the common areas to accommodate the extra students. The on-site traffic safety improvements we have listed there, that's almost $3 million. We work on those with the county all the time to address those. One of those, for instances, would be the project that people talk about a lot out at Frederick County Middle School and that end of the county. Need to have traffic light there to improve safety. That's something we hear about a good bit about from our community. The Sharando High School site expansion, there's two different costs that are listed there, the $33 million and the $16 million. That's an estimate, and it's from our architects and designers that's listed each one. So the two options that are there, option one assumes a 43,726 classroom addition to meet the 10-year projected growth. We've talked a lot about should we expand, should we build. This would be the expanding at Sharando option. Option two assumes a 23,000 square foot, 16 classroom addition. That would just eliminate the modulars. We've talked a lot about that. If we eliminate the modulars, what we would basically do in essence is bring all those students underneath the roof, but it would not accommodate the growth that's expected in that area. The next slide, Armel Elementary School, continuing in ABC order. You have the two costs there. There's a full or a school-specific renovation. That's an estimate, and that would be a renovation of 70,000 square feet. Bass Hoover Elementary School, I mentioned them in a minute. If you draw a line across the county from Armel and go over to Middletown, what you find in the middle is kind of Bass Hoover Elementary School. That would be a phase 2 renovation. Full renovation versus site-specific is the difference in the cost, 64,000 square feet. Dow J. Howard renovation and expansion is the next slide, full versus school specific. Those estimates are there and would include work on 34,000 square feet and a renovation of 69,000 square feet. Early Childhood Center is something we've talked about a great deal. We have a lot of growing needs in our community, and our community is their desire to have early childhood experiences through Child Find, preschool, Head Start, other opportunities. That's an October estimate. Again, all of these are October. 50,000 square feet facility. That would actually be a new facility, or putting that on the 4th high school site is a conversation. Facility services renovation, that's a renovation that costs a little more than $6 million. We have about 5,000 square feet of office space there and almost 45,000 square feet of warehouse that needs to be renovated. Fifth Middle School, we've talked about that in some of our meetings, and we did in our joint meeting. While we sit here today, probably in the next 5 years, we need another middle school. That cost is about $90 million. That cost would include a new construction of 150,000 square feet of facility. Continuing the list, Middletown Elementary School, a renovation of that school with full versus site specific. We have about 70,000 square feet there. The cost could be a little more than 30 million as an estimate, or a site specific, school specific would be more like 25 million. We have the addition at Millbrook High School, which is something we've talked about a great deal. That includes projected growth, of course, and try to accommodate those. Option one, the first dollar figure, that includes 35,000 square feet, 21 classroom addition to meet the growth in that area. Option two assumes a 16 classroom addition of 23,000 square feet, matching the Sharando option we talked about a few moments ago. We have NREP, which is our joint regional program that we share with a couple other school divisions. Two different opportunities here, full or site-specific renovation that have about 62,000 square feet there that need to be renovated in that space. A lot of great work happens there, and it's very tight from a student capacity standpoint. School board office building is on this list in ABC order. This is an October estimate as well. About 60,000 square feet are in this building. There's pieces of the building that needs to have some construction of a new facility is what this is for. So that's a new facility using the cost we estimated earlier, almost $24 million. A renovation at Sharando, not expansion, but renovation. There's full versus school specific. It's about 240,000 square feet in that building. So depending on a full renovation versus site specific, those costs are different. We have our support facilities west, Bright Futures, that's a renovation, almost $2 million. And we have about 5,000 square feet that is there, and that's part of that's a warehouse, and then there's a small office space inside. And then we have a 13th elementary school. So we've talked about expansion, a 4th high school. We've talked about a middle school. Here's an elementary school to accommodate growth. About $44 million, and that would be construction of a new 84,000 square feet facility for elementary students. Any questions about the projects or the list? I hope I have those in ABC order. I think I do.
Any questions from board members?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr. Atkins.
Hey, I am, seeing that the need and the concerns for all that we have on the CIP, and I think that we're going to do a lot of great things to help build the school community up even better. My only, thing that I've kind of been talking about this whole time is responsible spending of that taxpayer dollar, and providing that best education to our children. So with that being said, I'm on board. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Atkins. Any other board member comments, questions?
All right. I know we'll have further conversation here. I'm glad to answer questions anytime. I'd like to turn over the wheel.
I had a couple.
Oh, you have a, okay,
Yep.
please. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. So one of the items and I appreciate kind of the breakdown of the site-specific versus the full renovation costs.
Thank
And
you.
the explanation with the difference there. One question that I had specifically on the Sharando site expansion, one of the options there was a larger addition, a 26 classroom versus just adding on to put the students that are currently in modulars under roof.
Yes, sir.
Was option 2. Option 1 was adding 26 classrooms as opposed to the 16.
Correct.
In all the conversations we've had, it seems that the core of that building, that would not be what's best for that building. The core of that, we're already kind of stretching our limits in terms of cafeteria times and things like that. So I just want to make sure it's clear that giving an option that assumes adding 26 new classrooms doesn't necessarily mean that's what's best for the flow of that building and the already crowded hallways and the core of that building and the lunch times going from 10 to 1:30 or whatever they go to.
Yes, sir.
Those things. So if you could maybe speak to that.
Be happy to do that. Thank you. One of the reasons we included this on the list is after our joint meeting with our supervisors, there was still continued discussion about expansion versus building. Some of our board members here and some of our board of supervisors asked us to kind of price those estimates out to kind of see what they would cost. But my team here, all of us would recommend that we do not make an expansion of that size at Sharando because we do not believe that would be accommodated by the building. Thank you for bringing that up.
We just wanted to get ahead of, because we're getting a lot of questions about that. We just want to be full disclosure on what that cost would be and what that would look like.
I just want to make sure we put, with that cost, we put that information out there. with
Yes,
it.
sir. Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Monk, were you?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, just to follow up to that and appreciate that the costs are included there. However, can you elaborate more? And I know we've had many discussions about this in the work session and in the joint session with the Board of Supervisors, that even if this board were to say, hey, the 26 edition sounds great, the core could handle it, there are other challenges related to that. And I know we've talked about it in other sessions, but can you briefly hit on some of those challenges as to why you just shared that staff is recommending that is not the best option, one, and likely not physically possible?
I believe this is probably a team approach, so I'll take a couple, and then if I could invite Mr. Krisman to give a little bit of an update that you might have about that building itself. Could we add 26 classrooms with the current core? But while he's approaching the podium, so that you can hear what he has to say, what I would say to you is, number one, we'd have to add a second entrance into the school at a cost of about $5 million. We already have a traffic issue at Sharando. That's one of the things we have that takes place. We've been working with the county on entrances and exits to that property. And also the infrastructure that's there just cannot accommodate that many classrooms without a lot of upgrade. So, Mr. Krisman, didn't mean to put you on the spot, but as our soon departing expert, I'm going to miss you and all this information. Could you talk a little bit about what you know about Sharando and what would happen if we did add 26 rooms all of a sudden with water, technology, and all those other pieces, hallways?
I could certainly help with that question. The costs themselves would be something that would have to be developed over time. 26 classrooms, the current HVAC system does not have the capacity to cover 26 classrooms. So there would have to either be additional mechanical equipment brought in specifically for the addition or to upgrade what is there. There has been some extensive work done in the HVAC area, but it's not sized. It wasn't sized from the original build. And what we did was in-kind replacement, which means that it's approximately the same size, and it did not accommodate. And you got to remember that Sharanda has already been expanded once. 10 additional classrooms were put in about 1995, 1996. So it's already been expanded once. That was covered by the original HVAC equipment. The fire alarm system would have to be expanded. It's at maximum capacity now. There's 5 risers. There were 6. One was taken out of service. When the expansion went in, it was put back in, but that wouldn't accommodate the entire area. So the sprinkler system and the fire alarm system would also have to be done. The PA system is at max right now, so it would have to be expanded or supplemented. Water, that one probably okay. Electrical, I would be more concerned about because you're bringing an awful lot of load into the building. So it'd probably have to accommodate either an additional service or maximize the service that is there. They'd have to increase it and put in some sub panels and things. The generator's not sized big enough to handle the whole load either, so it would have to have a generator backup. So I guess the answer to the question is, can what's there accommodate the building? No. Can it be done? Yeah. It's just going to cost money.
Thank you, Mr. Crisman. One additional piece I would add would be if we have the 16 classroom addition, we would have to build that on the property of Sharando where the modulars currently sit, which is going to take away student space that we currently use for student activities. We talked about the challenges of that and the opportunity to build expansion. We'd have to put modulars on student parking while that takes place, which would take away a lot of that space we have already, pose entrance and exit issues. If you added 26 classrooms, we're going to have to buy property. We don't own enough property on that site to be able to add 26 classrooms. We have examined the property there, which I shared at the joint meeting. That I think we needed, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was about 18 acres we'd have to buy, I think, to add that many classrooms to that. If you go down that main entrance, it'd be on this property we don't own currently. I hope that answered the question for Mr. Monk.
Yep, and you walked exactly into where I was wanting, and so there potentially would be a need to purchase property, and depending upon the landowner's decisions, if that's the direction, it would be an eminent domain discussion as well. So a multitude of challenges, and just wanted to make sure that we reiterated some of those conversations before our discussion tonight. So thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Monk. Thank you, Mr. Crisman, Mr. Goodwin. I think that's all of my questions.
All right.
No, I do have one more. Mr. Kenny, previously on the last question that we had talking about some of those costs, you said you weren't really involved with putting together these estimates. Is that accurate? Okay.
Been a little tied up on some other projects, but Mr. Lee does puts most of this together. Yes.
And from my understanding, these are just kind of a flat square foot times whatever average we've come up with for price for renovation, occupied versus unoccupied, price for new construction, price per square foot.
Based on our region, based on contractors with expertise in this field and this area, and based on current divisions that are doing projects in our area, these are the best cost estimates that we have provided from them.
And decide if,
I don't know if that's part of your packet, but is it part of the packet? But that's exactly right. We gleaned that information from various sources, but all in the industry, from different school divisions, professional cost estimators, what have you, A&E firms, things like that. Current bids, I just heard the other day, the elementary school went out to bid and it came back at $55 million. So it's like, it's scary times right now for that,
But just using this kind of price per square foot to come up with the estimate, and then we go out to bid later, it may come in better, it may come in worse, and I know a couple of projects you're working on have come in under bid.
that's exactly right. I mean, this is the best we can
Best
give
we
you
can
at
do
this spot in time.
Yeah.
Yep, yeah, when it goes out to bid, that's when you'll really know, yep.
Thank you for that, sir.
Okay.
Mr. Acting Chairman,
Yes, sir.
is it safe to say that as you are going to be talking to the Board of Supervisors, is it safe to say that building the fourth high school fixes Sharando?
We believe that the option of the fourth high school accommodates the growth we have across the county in a way that should fix that growth in that area, yes. And again, our goal will be to eliminate modulars at all of our sites.
Because that's the way, they think. They want to know it's the bang of the buck.
Yes.
They want to know what is the most efficient way to fix the problem. So we wouldn't spend these millions of dollars on Sharando with trying to buy 18 acres of land and still then be pursuing, really, the fourth high school. We should be pursuing the fourth high school so that we don't have to do that. And so,
That's right.
okay.
To use my don't stop thinking about tomorrow thought, let's grab a hold of it and solve the problem instead of continuing to chase tomorrow with short-term solutions, because an expansion at those sites, my team would say, is a solution, and we have the data to show that, will not hold for the next 10 years. A fourth high school would hold for those years, for what we know, using mathematical calculations about growth in this county.
Yeah, and certainly just so, we all realize that Sharando is in need of a renovation.
Yes, sir.
It's a 30-year-old school that, quite frankly, has been beat to death. But in terms of this discussion as to overall capacity, the fourth high school is the attractive answer.
Thank you for saying so.
Thank you, Mr. Lake. And just to piggyback on that, I think exactly what you said, Mr. Goodwin. I think, there are options where we could potentially add on, but it's just another, piece of duct tape. It's not getting us where we need to go. It's a short-term solution. And I think with any of these, we have to look at, none of these are going to be the end-all, be-all, this is it. Hey, we've done this, we've built a school, we're good, we can hang up our hats. We have to continually, every year, be looking at the growth that's happening and evaluating and planning for what's next. Because as long as more students are coming, more projects like this are going to be needed. So,
Absolutely.
I appreciate the team's work in putting this together and in explaining everything so thoroughly.
Thank you. I'll turn over the control now to Dr. Hummer.
So the last thing we need to do this evening is thank you, sir. If you go to the next slide, which is on your screen there, is here are the projects and the items in order by year. These are the order that I determined after collaboration with our team, with collaboration with our school board, and making sure that we are, again, as Mr. Goodwin has phrased so eloquently, is we need to do a better job of thinking in the future. As I've mentioned to you all in the Personnel Committee about our staffing standards and making sure that we are doing better with what is coming rather than what's right now, because that is not going to lead us to making more efficient decisions down the road. So if you take a look at what is here in front of you on the next 3 slides, I'm not going to go through each of them as Mr. Goodwin has explained, but we can definitely discuss the order. But essentially what needs to happen is I'm going to discuss these projects in the order that I have presented to you, and as a school board, you can change the order. As I've mentioned to you at the retreat, as well as in other conversations, my proposal is that we only move forward 3 of these items. I don't think we should send all of them. I feel that that would be a distraction because I want to make sure that we focus on our needs. However, I would also recommend that you approve the order of these projects because we will continue to have these conversations in future years. So it's a two-part approval that would happen on Tuesday. No action would come out of this meeting because it's just a work session. But on Tuesday, you all would approve the 3 that would go downtown, which I have the 4th high school, the Armel or Middletown Elementary expansion, which we've said that that would be one or the other, not both, as well as the Jordan Springs Elementary expansion. So before we get questions and feedback on that number 2, I think we've had Armel on the CIP for many years, and as you all know, I do a lot of digging and working and going through all the information that's in front of me, and I would argue that Middletown is probably going to be the better option for us, again, for more long-term planning. I see all of the development happening down in Middletown, and I think that would be where we should shift and pivot and move forward with that Middletown expansion. That is my recommendation. So it would be 4th high school, Middletown Elementary expansion, of course, after discussion with all of you, and then the Jordan Springs Elementary expansion. And then if you look on down the list, there is a design, and this is intentional in regards to the order of these items. As I've mentioned to you all, this CIP list is based on age of our buildings, shape of our buildings, as well as our growth patterns. So if you look down at the 3rd slide, when we get to FY34, we're going to have to start having a conversation of expansion and growth, and we will have the space to do that. So Millbrook and Sharando is still on this list. I'm just recommending that we move it further down the list. And again, as we move throughout the years, these items can shift. What will not shift are the 3 items that I'm recommending that we move forward downtown. Because the last thing I would like to share, Mr. Chair, is that the CIP is a unique process, because if you look at downtown in our list, it says a 5-year CIP, but that changes every year. So we would send it downtown. If they approved it, we would then request the appropriation, and then we would move forward with the next step. So that is what I'm recommending. If I can make a recommendation, I wouldn't focus so much on the other items, because that is going to shift throughout the years unless there is an item you would like to move into the top 3 or 4. But that is my recommendation, that we move those 3 forward. And then, Mr. Chair, thank you. And if there's any questions, let me know.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir, Mr. Atkins.
My question is for Dr. Hummer. And I just heard you say the options on number 2 between Armel or Middletown. So with that, it's kind of like the first day I'm hearing about maybe doing Middletown. And I'm not saying that it doesn't need to be done, but regardless, we're going to have to redistrict. Would redistricting help and maybe move folks over to Armel and then not Middletown, or are we going to redistrict those folks to Middletown and not Armel?
Yes, great question, Mr. Atkins. So at the back end of this presentation, I added the maps that we've been looking at. And if you take a look at the southeast part of our school division, unfortunately, at this point, there is no room for any sort of redistricting at this point. I also, Mr. Atkins, I'm so glad you brought that up, because with any build or expansion of a school, we will have to redistrict. It is going to happen. And that is what our recommendation is. So for each of these builds or expansions, we would be redistricting. But if your question is, can we redistrict now in that part of the county, the answer would be no. There's no space to do that. But as we've discussed in other meetings, if the will of the board would want to consider exploring redistricting in the northeast part of the school division, that is a potential for us to take into consideration. Again, at this point, we're not recommending that, but again, in the will of the board, we would take a look at that. But again, we are recommending that when we expand and build, we would be redistricting.
I don't think I was clear then. My question is not that redistricting would solve that, the population growth down in that area at the south end of the county. My question would be, with redistricting, which school do you feel, and the data shows, would be better, Armel or Middletown? Because when we go to bring this up downtown and ask for the money, they're going to want a clear vision, not we're going to do one or the other.
Oh, yes. I'm sorry, Mr. Atkins. I apologize if I misunderstood. My recommendation, because again, you are correct. This is the first that the full board is hearing the pivot to Middletown, because again, as we were taking a look at information and having conversation, my recommendation, and you will see this on Tuesday unless this is changed at the will of the board, is Fourth High School, Middletown expansion, and Jordan Springs expansion. I left the Armel and Middletown on here because Armel is what we've been discussing, and I wanted to make sure that you knew it was to address the southeast part of our school division. So Middletown is going to be the one that is going to be going before you on Tuesday. So I apologize. Excuse me, I apologize if I didn't understand your question.
That worked. Yeah, I was just kind of unclear, and yeah, it was definitely a pivot for me. First time hearing about it, and I don't think you're wrong on that. I think with a lot of stuff that's going on in Stevens City, out there in the Middletown area, I mean, one of those two schools definitely needs to have that expansion, but I don't know which one. And if you guys have the data to back that up, I'd like to see the pros and cons of it. But once again, I'd like to see that data before I make that decision on it. But I'm good with going before the full board with either one or two and deciding one or either A or Middletown on Tuesday.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Monk.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I appreciate Dr. Hummer and team for revisiting the southern end of the county. I know after our work session and then the joint session with the Board of Supervisors, that was kind of a discussion there of, are there other avenues? And so I appreciate you all revisiting and looking and, identifying potentially Middletown as an option there. As we look at the growth, to me, that is one of the largest challenges outside of our high school population is identifying avenues to address that in the southern end of our county. I recognize that Jordan Springs is a unique issue, but I think the southern end of the county is definitely a challenge there. As I'm looking at the maps, the projection of the elementary on kind of that 10 and 5-year model, it definitely shows that Middletown is an area of great need, not saying that Armel's not. Just wanting to confirm that moving forward with the Middletown expansion would still leave the board in a position, future board, for the greatest leverage in those rezoning decisions. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yes, sir. So when you take a look at the southeast part of our school division and the northeast, for lack of argument, that is definitely where the growth is happening and where the growth is coming. So not only is this going to help the board and our school division now, if you take a look at our 10-year plan, because again, this is kind of outlining our projects in a 10-year span, we have the 13th elementary school right around the corner. So after we address the growth in each of these regions, we will be planning ahead to start to build the 13th elementary school, which as of right now, it's projected to be in this particular region. So, and to be even more specific, we believe that adding this expansion with that redistricting, we will be able to, again, minimize the amount of redistricting out of rezoning out of Middletown, but also move some students out of Bass Hoover, Armel, and potentially even Orchard View to kind of balance those numbers that are in that region, which is going to be a lot more extensive than that, but there will be a lot of work to rebalance that. And so to answer your question, yes, in that region, that would add for the most amount of wiggle room to move students around.
Thank you. And then just a follow-up, if I may, Mr. Chair, sticking on the elementary conversation, should there be an expansion of Middletown in the southern end of the county, and then, if there's a desire to do Jordan Springs in the northern, can staff share where that would leave us on that 33-34 projection at the elementary level? I recognize that zoning, that we wouldn't be specific on where we would be zoning-wise, but from a projection standpoint, for all of elementary, do we feel that we would be in a good position capacity-wise if both of those projects were to be completed by that 33, 34 projection?
Yes. So I would also like to add that is why we're not just recommending an expansion in each of those regions, because we would have to expand and redistrict to meet our needs and to prepare for those 10-year projections as you're discussing there. And then, as I mentioned, we would then be taking a look at the 13th elementary school as we got closer to that 10-year projection. So yes, we would expand, and then we would rezone once those expansions are completed, because we have the space up in the northeast, and then we would be able to utilize the different schools down in the southeast to balance those numbers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Comstock.
Mr. Lake?
Can anyone tell me, is there any plans, say, in the near future, the next, say, half year, full year, to do modulars at Middletown? Middletown, according to the budget book, does not show any modulars, yet it's one of our most overcrowded schools. So how's that work?
Currently, there's not a plan to put modulars at that school. We are viewing all of these maps and beginning to make decisions about how we move forward with you and our projects for the future. It's going to have to be addressed. If we don't add an expansion there, the solution will have to be modulars. That is the other solution.
We're hopeful, Mr. Chair, if I may, we're hopeful that doesn't happen. We don't want to put those plans together, but if we don't get funding for this, and if we're not able to move forward with this, that is going to be our next step, and we will be having these conversations very soon.
Yeah, I just think in general, Frederick County CIP plan for the future, first priority should be to eliminate modulars, and then kind of take things from there. The modulars don't have any positive anything about them. And certainly the security concerns have been repeated over and over and over again. So it was just curious to me. I mean, I know the budget book is printed in August or whatever it is, and it just jumps out at me that it is so overcrowded, but yet we're status quo, sort of. So anyway, it was curious to me. Okay, thanks.
I guess if I may piggyback on Mr. Lake's question, be a little bit more pointed with mine. How is Middletown getting by 66 students over capacity, yet Armel at 8 students over capacity just had modular units added to that building? And we felt the need to add modulars there, but not at Middletown, which is more overcrowded than Armel.
Dr. Hummer?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I think that's something that we could definitely look into. I don't know, Mr. Kenny or Mr. Chrisman, if you know. I know I won't be able to continue to use this card, but that was before that I got here. But I think if I can answer generally, Mr. Comstock, 'cause I think that's a great question, Mr. Chair, I think this is why we need to do better. I think this is why we need to do better with long-term planning. I think this is why we need to do better with continuously looking at these projections and looking at the future, because we just added the modulars at Jordan Springs. When I very first started, we were in a predicament that if we did not add modulars, we were going to be in some serious problems, serious trouble. And I think you're right that we should have added some sort of modulars down in Middletown. Can't speak to that, but we need to do better with planning ahead for that. And as Mr. Lake mentioned, we don't want to have to add modulars down to Middletown, but that's going to be our next step. If we don't make progress with moving forward with this, then unfortunately, that's what we're going to have to look at. So I can't answer that. When I was doing the work in regards to Armel and Middletown, and this is kind of reiterating what Mr. Goodwin said, and as I mentioned to you all, I committed to making sure that we've looked into everything that is presented to us, that we come forward and fully inform you with decisions that we're making. And then when we were sitting there having conversations about Armel and Middletown, and the conversation is that Armel has been on the list for many years. And then with the Lake Frederick, and then the development's not happening down in that region, and it shifted over down into Middletown. We've seen all the growth down there. That's where it shifted. And it was something that crept up on us as a county, and that's something that I don't want us to creep up on us anymore. We need to do a better job of working with the folks downtown as we're doing now, getting ahead of the developments that are coming in and making sure that we get ahead of the projects. And that's why we put this 10-year list together, because as we've had conversations with downtown, the growth is continuing. And as you know, Mr. Comstock, there's more growth coming, and we want to be able to respond to that. So generally speaking, I can't answer it specifically. It's something I can look into a little bit more, but that's kind of a general answer to that question, sir.
And I know at the time when we were having discussions regarding Jordan Springs and adding modulars there, and that site specifically, just there was an inability to handle the capacity of students there, the number of students. And someone on staff mentioned that Middletown is just better equipped to be able to operate in an overcrowded way. I don't know if anyone can speak to how Middletown's getting by. Like, where are they? Do they just have large class sizes, or are they utilizing spaces? How are their spaces being utilized differently, where the 66 overcapacity is able to happen on a day-to-day basis there, but in our other facilities, it's not been able to?
What I would say, thank you for your question, is I can get those answers for you about space utilization. I would remind the board and remind all of us that we've only had these maps for a couple of months. These are numbers that were put together that we use for the board retreat. So these numbers that are hard and fast are numbers we've been reacting to in a number of different ways for plans going forward. But I have not, in my conversations with the principal at Middletown, modulars have not been asked for, and we've talked many times about the size of classrooms there. So I met with, again, the principal at Bass Hoover this week. I'm frequently talking with Heather, the principal at Armel. So, and you know that site well at Armel. So we can move forward with modulars. We're trying to have a solution where we don't need to do that. But these are answers that you deserve and that I'll get for you. I'll find that answer for you. Thank you for your question.
And don't misinterpret, I'm not trying to push for modulars at Middletown. That's not the intent. I'm just
I didn't
wondering,
think so. Thanks.
are they running with overcrowded classrooms, or are they missing opportunities because they're having to utilize spaces as classrooms that would be better used to serve kids in other ways? Or what does it look like on a day? And maybe I should take a visit, I don't know. But I'm just wondering how they're doing over there.
Be happy to visit there with you if you'd like to go take a look at that. I have a feeling that the principal's creative in use of space and making that work for students in that building. But we'll discover that together. I'd look forward to that.
Sounds good. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Ms. Martin.
I keep hearing about this rezoning going on after the building has taken place. Isn't there a possibility of doing some of it before to alleviate some of the tension?
So thank you, Mrs. Martin, for that question. As we've been talking about, I think rezoning, redistricting is definitely in our best interest after a build, because we will have more space to move those students around, and then we're also going to have to fill those spaces. I think if we rezone and redistrict now, which again, that's the will of the board and what we want to do, I think that's going to put us in an uncomfortable spot, because we are going to have to rezone again once we build. And moving students around is definitely uncomfortable. It is something that came up at our CIP town hall the other evening, so we would definitely have to engage in the community. But if that is something that the board wants us to do and look into, of course we can do that. Keep in mind, that's not something that happens overnight. It is an 8 to 10 month process, not to deter you, but I want us to think through that, because if we are looking at expanding and building as well as doing a redistricting at the same time, I think it might cause for some complications if we're rezoning as well. Ms. Martin, I will share, though, is that if we don't get these projects and we don't move forward, I think we're going to have to reconsider that recommendation from myself and our staff. But again, you all have full authority as a school board if that is something that you want us to consider and take a look at. That's just not something that I'm currently recommending, but if that is what we need to do, then we will do that.
Well, I know what I'm going to say is not popular at all, but if you look at this map, you've got 121% at Jordan Springs, and then you've got Stonewall at 76%. They're only 2 miles from each other, right?
Roughly, yes. Yes, ma'am.
They are, Ms. Martin. And if you look at the next map, Dr. Hummer, I think a rezone would just be a short-term fix, because look at it here.
Well, I know it would be short-term,
Yeah.
but it would help in the interim of building. I said I knew it wasn't going to be popular.
Hey.
I appreciate staff putting together these maps and that we have all of this information, because I think it's important that we do kind of look at the big picture when we do these things, because I think there have been opportunities, as we're seeing in Jordan Springs, where situations where maybe we didn't fully anticipate or plan for the growth that was coming, and we did something that was good in the moment that has left us in a situation that now needs to be addressed. So I appreciate that staff is kind of taking this look towards tomorrow and putting this information together so that when we build schools, when we rezone, when we do these important and necessary things, we do them in a responsible and appropriate way that accounts for that growth. And I appreciate your commitment, Dr. Hummer, to continuing to do that. Any other questions from board members? No, we don't need action on these. Oh, yes, sir.
Appreciate it. And Ms. Martin's point, I understand kind of the thought process behind the idea of rezoning there. I think Mr. Comstock was talking about making sure that the rezonings are thoughtful. I just might recommend that if there is a consideration of rezoning in the northern end of the county, that it be done to impact the least number of current students and maybe be more of a futuristic and construction/building rezoning for new homes, just because that does create a lot of community challenges if we are rezoning the same student multiple times, but also understand that the situation currently isn't getting better, so there might need to be something done. But just would encourage the future board that if those conversations are being had, that they are in a position where the least impact to students is happening, and that might be in new construction and new homes.
Thank you, Mr. Monk. I agree with that as well.
Okay, that's all we had. And as I mentioned to you earlier, there's no action here. Just wanted you all to be aware what will be coming before you next on Tuesday with the 3 items coming forward. And then if there's any questions before then, please let me know.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Dr. Hummer. Looking for one more motion.
To adjourn?
We have a motion to adjourn
Second.
and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.